From a small island in the Mediterranean to the throne of an empire, one man's ambition redrew the map of Europe, and his legacy continues to shape our world today. This is the incredible story of Napoleon Bonaparte. Who was this man, often seen as both a hero and a tyrant, a genius and a warmonger? Join us as we journey through the dramatic life and career of one of history's most fascinating figures. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, a rugged land that had only recently become French. He was an outsider from the start, speaking with a heavy Corsican accent and often teased by his peers at military school in mainland France. But this young, brooding boy possessed an iron will and a brilliant mind for mathematics and history. Little did anyone know, he was destined for greatness far beyond what anyone could imagine. The French Revolution was the crucible that forged Napoleon. This period of intense social and political upheaval tore down the old order and created a power vacuum. For an ambitious young officer like Napoleon, it was an opportunity. His big break came in 1793 at the Siege of Toulon. While senior officers faltered, the 24-year-old artillery captain devised a brilliant plan to capture the city from Royalist and British forces. His success was spectacular, earning him a promotion to brigadier general. The name Napoleon Bonaparte began to echo in the halls of power in Paris. But it was in Italy that Napoleon truly became a legend. Appointed commander of the French army there, he took a demoralized, poorly supplied force and through sheer charisma and tactical genius led them to a series of stunning victories against the Austrians. He was a master of speed, surprise, and concentration of force. He moved his army with lightning speed, striking his enemies where they least expected it, defeating larger armies one piece at a time. Battles like Lodi and Rivoli became textbook examples of military art. He returned to France not just as a general, but as a national hero, a savior of the Republic. Hungry for more glory and seeking to disrupt British trade routes to India, Napoleon embarked on a daring and exotic campaign to Egypt in 1798. While his naval fleet was famously destroyed by Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile, the land campaign was initially successful. It was here that his soldiers discovered the Rosetta Stone, a key that would unlock the secrets of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. But with his army cut off from France and the political situation in Paris descending into chaos, Napoleon made a bold decision. He abandoned his army and secretly sailed back to France, his sights set on a much bigger prize: power itself. Back in Paris in 1799, Napoleon found a government that was weak, corrupt, and unpopular. With the help of his brother and other political allies, he executed a swift and largely bloodless coup d'état on the 18th of Brumaire. He overthrew the Directory and established a new government, the Consulate. As first consul, he held almost absolute power. The chaos of the revolution was over. The age of Napoleon had begun. He promised order, stability, and glory, and the French people, weary of a decade of turmoil, eagerly embraced him. Napoleon was not just a general, he was a gifted administrator and a tireless reformer. He worked day and night to rebuild France. He centralized the government, reformed the banking system, built new roads and canals, and reorganized the education system. But his most enduring legacy from this period is the Napoleonic Code, the first modern legal code in France. It swept away the confusing mess of feudal laws and established principles like equality before the law, freedom of religion, and the protection of private property. It was so clear and progressive that it was adopted in whole or in part by dozens of countries around the world, and its influence is still felt in legal systems today. In 1804, Napoleon took the final step. In a grand ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, with the Pope in attendance, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. In a famous gesture of self-reliance, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head, then crowned his wife Josephine as Empress. This act symbolized that his power came not from God or from tradition, but from his own achievements and the will of the people. He was no longer General Bonaparte or First Consul. He was Napoleon I, the founder of a new dynasty. The Napoleonic Empire was forged in battle. From 1805 to 1809, Napoleon's Grande Armée, his Grand Army, seemed invincible. He marched across Europe, shattering one coalition of enemies after another. His masterpiece came in 1805 at the Battle of Austerlitz. Outnumbered by a combined Russian and Austrian army, he feigned weakness, lured them into a trap, and achieved a decisive and brilliant victory. It is still studied today as a perfect example of military strategy. Victories like Jena Auerstedt against Prussia and Friedland against Russia followed, and by 1810, Napoleon was the master of continental Europe. He placed his brothers and marshals on the thrones of Spain, Italy, and Holland. His empire stretched from the coast of Spain to the borders of Russia. But empires built on conquest are fragile. Napoleon's ambition was limitless, and it would prove to be his undoing. His continental system, an attempt to cripple Britain through a continent-wide trade embargo, backfired, causing widespread economic hardship and resentment. His long and brutal war in Spain drained his resources and tied down hundreds of thousands of his best troops in a savage guerrilla conflict. But his greatest mistake, the fatal error from which he would never recover, was the invasion of Russia in 1812. Napoleon assembled the largest European army ever seen, over 600,000 men, and marched into the vast plains of Russia. The Russians, under Tsar Alexander I, refused to give him the decisive battle he craved. Instead, they retreated, burning their own villages and crops, following a scorched earth policy. Napoleon reached Moscow, only to find it a deserted, burning city. With winter approaching and his supply lines stretched to the breaking point, he was forced to order a retreat. The retreat from Moscow is one of the most horrific episodes in military history. Stalked by starvation, freezing temperatures, and relentless Russian attacks, the Grande Army disintegrated. Of the more than 600,000 men who entered Russia, fewer than 100,000 staggered out. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. The disaster in Russia broke the myth of Napoleon's invincibility. His enemies, smelling blood, formed a new and powerful coalition. A weakened France was invaded, and after the massive Battle of the Nations at Leipzig, Napoleon was forced to abdicate his throne in 1814. The victorious Allies exiled him to the tiny island of Elba, off the coast of Italy. They believed they had seen the last of him. They were wrong. While the old powers of Europe squabbled over the spoils of war in Vienna, Napoleon plotted his return. In February 1815, he escaped from Elba, landed in France with a handful of followers, began a legendary march to Paris. The soldiers sent to arrest him, his old veterans, tearfully flocked to his banner, shouting "Vive l'Empereur." King Louis XVIII fled, and Napoleon re-entered Paris without a single shot being fired. This dramatic comeback is known as the 100 Days. But the powers of Europe were not going to let him reclaim his empire. They immediately declared him an outlaw and mobilized their armies. The final confrontation came on June 18, 1815, on a muddy field in modern-day Belgium near a small village called Waterloo. In one of the most famous battles in history, Napoleon's French army clashed with a coalition army led by the British Duke of Wellington and the Prussian Gebhard von Blücher. It was a brutal, hard-fought battle, hanging in the balance for hours. But the timely arrival of the Prussians turned the tide. Napoleon's elite imperial guard was broken, and his army collapsed into a rout. The dream was over. This time his captors took no chances. Napoleon was exiled to Saint Helena, a remote, wind-swept rock of an island in the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of miles from anywhere. Here, under constant British guard, he spent the last 6 years of his life dictating his memoirs, reflecting on his incredible triumphs and his devastating failures. He died on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51. So what is the legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte? It's a complex and controversial one. He was a military dictator whose wars cost millions of lives and plunged a continent into conflict for over a decade. Yet he was also a modernizing force who swept away the remnants of feudalism, spread the ideals of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity across Europe, and laid the foundations for the modern state with his legal, administrative, and educational reforms. The Napoleonic Code remains the basis of law in many countries. The map of Europe was irrevocably changed. Love him or hate him, there is no denying his impact. He was a true force of nature, a man whose life story continues to captivate and inspire debate more than 2 centuries after his death. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, please give this video a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next historical deep dive. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Napoleon in the comments below. Was he a hero or a villain? Let us know. Till next time.